You know, when I look at Omar, I try to look to his future and not so much the past, because I think that's how he is looking at his life now. He knows a lot of bad things happened to him, but at this point, he's not focusing on it. He's looking to his future and living a normal life, having friends.
We have two major things in common. First of all, many of us have a personal relationship or a first degree of separation relationship with Omar Khadr, and we're confident that he's going to be ready for reintegration in the community, and we're going to be here to support him when that happens, and we're here to hope with him for a successful verdict today on his bail application. But we're also here because each of us are parents, children, brothers, sisters. None of us would be content to have our family members or our friends be subjected to the type of injustice that Omar has suffered for the last 14 years. And we're here today to stand in solidarity with him and hoping that he'll finally see some true justice here today in the courthouse. I'm here as a parent, first and foremost, because when I first heard Omar Khadr's story 6 years ago, I had a 14 and a 16-year-old at the time. I heard a story about a 15-year-old Canadian youth who was basically abandoned by his government in a time that he needed them. And I thought a lot about how I would be really upset if that were my children in that circumstance. And I decided at that time to get involved and get interested. And for the last number of years, I've been helping a number of other committed people who are concerned about that injustice take action, raise awareness, and today show support.
How would you like Omar Khadr to be viewed by the Canadian citizens?
How would I like him to be viewed? Well, I would like for them to have a chance to view him. I would like for them to get to know him the way I've had the opportunity myself. I've had the privilege of meeting him probably several dozen times, visiting him in prison, and I can certainly give my personal testimony for what it's worth that he's a well-adjusted, interesting, personable young man who's just very eager to get on with what all of us would consider a normal life. He's interested in his education, he's interested in starting a family, he's interested in just getting on with the normal things of life. And that would be probably the most important thing I would communicate to Canadians. And I would like them to hear that from him, except that unfortunately the government is preventing him from having access to the media from the prison, so that's not able to happen today. But hopefully my word is good worth something. You can talk to many of the professors at King's who over the years have worked with him closely. Just about anybody who's come into close contact with Omar Khadr has given glowing testimonials as to his ability to re-enter society safely and as a productive member.
So you just sat in the last 2 days of Omar Khadr's application to be allowed bail pending the appeal or the review of his convictions in the United States. But you've been an advocate for Omar Khadr for a while. What about his case do you find most compelling that requires your attention?
Well, I have been an advocate for Omar since 2008, and it's always struck me that this young person never received any justice, whether it was international laws, our own, domestic charter, constitution. And so I think it's a travesty of justice. And so with this potential for bail pending appeal, it's a great opportunity for Omar to finally get out. He has been incarcerated in the most abusive situations. He's been tortured, he's been in Guantanamo. Even when he came to Millhaven, when he flew, when he got off the plane, they took him blindfolded to Millhaven and put him for 3 months into solitary confinement, 24 hours a day. He actually then went on a hunger strike and when he had been sent from Guantanamo, he was actually in minimum security there. So this was actually a direct indication that the government was going to politically interfere in the treatment of Omar. So his whole history has been this travesty of confinement, but not just regular confinement, abusive confinement. He was waterboarded, he was sleep deprived, and even here in Alberta, his eye surgery He was going blind. He couldn't continue his studies. Even that surgery was delayed to the point that his lawyer had to do a habeas corpus writ to tell the warden, you know, he is he has rights to surgery. He has right to health care. So today, I mean, obviously, the bail hearing is not going to correct all of the injustices and all of the 13 years that have happened to him, but it will be so nice for him to get out and see the river valley. One of the things, because I do visit Omar, he has pictures of the river valley in his room, and he would love to kayak the river. He'd love to. I told him that my husband is a runner and that my husband can help him train to be a runner if he likes, and the whole notion of, you know, being able to run free in our beautiful river valley, like, you know, it's something that he loved to do. He'd love to see the mountains. You know, he gets lots of postcards, lots of letters. He can see the mountains a little bit from the prison grounds. So this is just an opportunity really for Omar to get out, to live a little bit of a normal life with a very loving family, his defense lawyer. And so yeah, I'm here to support him and you know, cheer him on, and cheer on the lawyers who have been doing everything pro bono. They're brilliant, they're passionate, and I don't know how they've been able to continue this for 10 years. With all the ups and downs, it's been a legal roller coaster. So yeah, that's why I'm here.
So you look at this to a human rights perspective. So what are some of the human rights issues that you find most compelling about Omar Khadr's case?
Yeah, well, I guess first off, he was 15 years old. Canada was the lead on setting up the optional protocol. We convinced 130 countries to sign a protocol to protect child soldiers. And when it came to our own citizen, Omar Khadr, we said, sorry, I guess we're not going to do this. You know, it's hypocrisy, and he has a right to being recognized as a child soldier. You know, secondly, Geneva Conventions, they do say that torture of a prisoner is wrong, and Omar was definitely tortured. That happened in Bagram. We have evidence that he was waterboarded. We know that because the Supreme Court decision on 2008 and also 2010 said that he had been you know, for 3 weeks, for every 3 to 4 hours, he was moved so he could never sleep properly, and they were softening him up so that he would then be interrogated by the CIA. And so these are all human rights violations that offend the very nature of us being human beings, you know, to take a young person like this and torture him. And then, of course, for many years he was left in Guantanamo without any charges and without even the access to a lawyer. You know, I think that for me, whenever I visit him, and I guess I'm not really talking about, you know, all the things that have happened in the past, because in some ways he's quite an amazing person. He has somewhat transcended a lot of that, a lot of the horror that happened to him, and he has had a lot of help from a psychiatrist and a psychologist, but he's a guy who basically comes across as so normal. He has a great sense of humor. He's really kind. He's really smart. He excels in mathematics and the sciences. He's always wanted to be a doctor. I don't know if that's going to happen. But, you know, when I look at Omar, I try to look to his future and not so much the past, because I think that's how he is looking at his life now. He knows a lot of bad things happened to him, but at this point, he's not focusing on it. He's looking to his future and living a normal life, having friends, you know, meeting new friends.
So one of the sort of suggestions made by Khadr's lawyer was that we should be taking his confessions to the crimes with a grain of salt, because that might have been the only way that he was going to be able to get out of Guantanamo Bay, and also that there's a lot of contentious issues about the charges because the charges he confessed to were not actually crimes at the time when he supposedly committed them, but were made illegal 4 years after the fact. What are your sort of thoughts on that?
I think that's a really good question because, you know, the chief prosecutor in Omar Khadr's military tribunal was a Colonel Morris Davis. And he eventually resigned from the military tribunal because they were accepting evidence based on torture. But he said that the running joke at Gitmo was you had to be guilty to get out. And so the only way Omar could get out of Guantanamo was to say that he was guilty. And that was understood, and the chief prosecutor said it himself. He said that was the really neat thing. That's how you could get these guys, is you could make them say they were guilty. That was the only way to get out. And so essentially he had no choice. He said that on a number of occasions, you know, he didn't want to plead guilty, but he didn't want to be there for all that time. If he didn't plead guilty, he would have been subjected to a 40-year sentence, because that was already known to him. And so it was a forced plea bargain. It wasn't, I'd say, it was a forced plea bargain so that he would get 8 years and he would be sent back to Canada. So I think the lawyers present that accurately, and it just again shows you the travesty that was the military tribunal. U.S. citizens are not allowed to be tried in a military tribunal. It's against the law. But our government said it was okay for a citizen to, in fact, be tried in a military tribunal. So, in a sense, our rights are not as equal as American citizens. And it's just one of the many, many problems with the military tribunal, which has been basically called a legal black hole by many, many legal experts.
And if there's one thing that you would like Edmontonians to reconsider about what their opinions about the Omar Khadr case is, what would that be?
Well, I would just encourage them to do their own research. You know, don't listen to the vitriol and the propaganda from people like Stephen Blaney, Minister of Public Security, Stephen Harper. They have a political agenda. They are using Omar as a scapegoat for their own personal, political gain. There's a lot to know about Omar. People should, if they want to really understand it, it means they actually have to do some research. They have to read and understand what's happened to him and understand that our rule of law has been totally subverted in his case. We've actually said we don't have equal rights in our country. Some citizens have it, but people like Omar Khadr don't have it. And you know, what does that mean to Edmontonians? I mean, could you be the next person, in fact, who you thought you had rights, but then you don't have rights because the government wants to take them away for whatever reason? Maybe with the new Bill C-51, that might happen to people here who might be accused of things and not given the proper protections of our laws. So I think I would say to Edmontonians, give this young man a chance. When you get to know him, you're going to really like him. He's positive, he has a great sense of humor, he's really smart, he wants to get on with his life, he works hard, his teachers all love him because he's so disciplined, he's curious, he loves to study, so he's going to make a good contribution to our community, and people are going to love him. They just need to get a chance to know him. And hopefully there will be some opportunities for the media to interview him, because of course that's the other thing, is the Harper government has silenced him. They have not allowed any media to interview him. So.
My name's Colin McCarthy. I'm an Edmonton area physician, and I basically have been following Omar Khadr's case just in the papers for a number of years. It's always struck me as really very unjust what's happened to this young man. And so my friend Helen here, when we found out that he was, there was going to be a bail hearing, I thought it was finally time to actually come and see how, in theory, our government was implementing justice for this young man. And so that's why I was here today, to listen to the arguments on both sides. And I suppose to some extent by wearing this little orange ribbon to give some support, because I think what's been happening to Omar Khadr and potentially a lot of other people who are tarred with the brush of terrorists are no longer treated as human beings. And while the government of Canada always does have to protect its citizens, I think when it is so determined to do that, the people they're accusing are stigmatized and they're not treated as human beings anymore. And I think that's unfortunate because it doesn't serve justice really in the long run.
And what sort of issues of justice are most weigh on you in the Omar Khadr case?
Well, the situation is he was a young kid who basically was taken by his parents and put into a situation where he was in a battlefield. He was basically a child soldier. And we've had people like Romeo Dallaire here support Omar Khadr's case, object to the whole process how he was found guilty. I mean, as Helen has just commented, Canada is a signatory to basically a policy or document, international things, against child soldiers. And we have a situation here in Canada where one of our own citizens was a child soldier, and we don't even follow, what we claim how they should be treated. The whole situation to me he's become a political football where it's sad that people died, but if you're going to charge soldiers in a conflict, even if they were over age, as being criminals, I mean, all the armies in the world will be subject to prosecution. The whole thing has become a political farce, basically, and the Canadian government seemed more interested at this stage in prosecuting him, keeping the American government happy, rather than looking out for its own citizens and natural justice. And that's, I find, very sad.
And what would you like Edmontonians to reconsider when they think about the Omar Khadr case?
Well, I think, if we can get beyond the stereotype of terrorists label that's stuck on people, I'm not saying that I'm trying to defend terrorism or anything, but you have to look at each individual case as it is and try to keep an open mind and realize that all of us are human beings. And it's not that some people can't do bad things and need to be held accountable for it, but each case has to be looked at its own merits and not just people make a rash decision just on because a journalist has stuck it or a politician has stuck the name terrorist on something. We're hopefully rational beings, hopefully. And this case has just been a travesty of justice, and people need to be open to that possibility. It happens here in Canada just like anywhere else.
Yeah. So you think that he should have been treated as a child soldier and not treated with the sort of same moral culpability as an adult might have been, since he didn't choose to be there and was under parental authority at the time.
Yeah. Well, that's exactly it. It's like he was there because his dad was there, right? And I'm thinking, if it was my son and he was there with me, I'm going, he's a 15-year-old kid. He has his own self-interest. He's not interested in what I do, right? And I'm going, so I kind of lean towards that, and the fact that he was treated worse than a lot of adults kind of disturbed the hell out of me. Going like, really? You would torture this kid endlessly for what? What purpose? It's like, other than vengeance on the fact that he was there. That was the only thing he was guilty of in my mind.
Omar Khadr is now 28 years old, so it's been 13 years since he was first arrested. So do you think that how much consideration should be given to his history of good behavior and being a minimum security prisoner, and the perception or the argument that's sort of put forth that he's potentially a threat? Does that hold any water for you?
It doesn't hold any water for me. I think he's been, like you said, he has been a model citizen. He's done everything that they asked of him. And I think that's more than enough. I'm going, let him have his bail. I'm going, see how he behaves, Right now, a lot of it is speculation from the federal side of it, of what he will be like, So far, if he's going to behave anything like he's done in prison, I don't see why they couldn't let him out.